Is your JD Edwards system still on-prem, but you're relying on cloud AI to extend its capabilities? Or are you considering or maybe already running a full cloud deployment where JDE, your data, and your AI models all live together? In this episode, we'll uncover the real-world trade-offs between hybrid and full cloud JDE plus AI architectures, what it means for security, performance, cost, and even innovation. You'll walk away with a clearer understanding of which model fits your business and how to chart a practical path forward. Welcome to Not Your Grandpa's JD Edwards, the podcast where ERP stability meets enterprise innovation. I'm your host, Nate Bushfield, and today we're tackling a strategic decision that's increasingly urgent for IT leaders and JDE customers. Where should your JDE platform live, and where should your AI live with it? So you have two options. You keep JD Edwards on-prem and connect to an external cloud AI service, or you move everything, JD, data, and AI to the cloud together. Each choice affects security, performance, costs, staffing, and even your pace of innovation. But with me is Drew Robb, an AI advisor and a longtime JD expert and a longtime guest of this podcast, who's guided clients through both paths. He'll help us break this down segment by segment so you can make an informed decision and walk away with a roadmap that fits. Drew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Nate. Thanks for asking, and I'm super excited for this topic today because we do have a lot of customers who really talk about, staying on-prem, like you said, but then using the AI cloud services out there, or just moving everything to the cloud, which is a bigger investment. We'll talk more about that later, but we do have customers in both realms, so it's really important to understand, the limitations of each side, as well as why one side's better than the other, but how you can really take both routes of implementation when implementing an AI solution in your business. So thank you, Nate. Happy to be here and happy to talk about this great topic.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited about this topic. So let's get us rolling. How does security and compliance differ between keeping JD on-prem with cloud services or the hybrid model, as it's usually termed, versus migrating everything to the cloud?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And security is a great place to start because that's what a lot of customers really talk about. And really with the on-prem plus cloud or the hybrid model, it's really about, having control over everything from your infrastructure that's in-house to your security, right? You have a lot more control with how that's set up. You can seamlessly integrate with your security architecture and your infrastructure architecture as well, with the cloud AI services that you will reach out to. And we'll talk more about connectivity a little bit later. With the full cloud, though, really the cloud provider kind of handles everything as far as scaling up, scaling down, the security around the architecture as well. Utilizing the different services, the databases out there, the instances to run AI models, is all run via the cloud provider, whether that be OCI, AWS, or Azure, or even the other cloud providers out there. Um, Jumping in real quick to networking though, it really the on-prem plus cloud or hybrid version, it's really around having secure connectivity out there, right? It's really about connecting a secure VPN encryption, when data is at rest or data is in transit, or even providing, tokenization is another option, from sending data into and out of your on-premises infrastructure and data infrastructure out to the AI models that you would use. This could provide latency because you're moving from, the on-prem to through a VPN, the secure VPN, out to the data model and all the way back to that secure infrastructure inside of your ERP, inside of your infrastructure. So I think it's really important to understand that piece as well. Whereas the full cloud, everything, you migrate up to the cloud, everything is inside the cloud, right? You've really just got to set up secure VPN to connect to different AI services, whether it be, a digital assistant or a large language model or RAG, but everything's in there, which then again reduces latency, connecting to all those different AI services as well. Another thing to really think about security is around identity and access management. And you hear a lot with JD Edwards is that role-based security, right? So role-based security with your AD accounts, right? And having that inside JD Edwards, and it's possible, right? With on-prem plus cloud or the hybrid model to do this. But it's really about connecting your role-based security that you already have inside of JD Edwards with the identity and access management roles in OCI or other identity and access management inside of or for other cloud providers such as AWS and Azure. So it's coupling those two together, which can be a little cumbersome, a little tedious to do. And it's really about understanding, that financial people only have access to their financial data, financial models when you connect all these services together, or the manufacturing space. But you just know you have to do, JD Edwards security mixed with, the cloud security. Um, whereas the full cloud model, you already have everything up there. You can leverage identity security out there already, right? And just simplifies everything from really control as well as auditing as well. When you're running these AI solutions and really setting up different users to access different things inside of the AI solution. So um, with that, we also talk about and talking about audit trails, governance, all that kind of stuff going into that. I kind of already mentioned, the on-prem. It's kind of hard to maintain that audit trail. Where's everything going? You might have auditing inside of, maybe a database for database queries. You might have it in the AI model, which is in the cloud. Whereas for a full cloud model, you can, have monitoring of all different user interactions between the AI services and the monitoring and logging of what's going on. Can easily track costs and usability, and that'll help leverage that. And we'll talk about costs a little bit later as well. But around security, those are kind of the main points we really want to dig into. So, and think about the differences there.
Yeah. So what you're saying is when it comes to network data protection and maybe an identity and access management,
Yeah,
that's more of it's better for the cloud model. Am I right
absolutely.
with that?
Yeah, I,
And
I would
then
agree with that. Yeah.
yeah, and then the vice versa when it comes to control and
Yes.
like simplicity and even the compliance and governance side, maybe an on-prem model is a little bit easier to maintain for a lot of these companies that are out there. Am I right?
Yeah, I would say that's a good way to put it. It's really about, with clients that are just very, I need to keep a lot of this inside of my four walls. I don't want data getting out. I don't want to re-architect, entire security model with, role-based security and all that. That's really when it comes into play. And you already have your compliance and audit, and traceability becomes a lot easier as well. So yeah, I completely agree. And that's exactly what I'm getting at there, for sure, around security.
Yeah, of course. But so what's really involved in securing cloud APIs from on-prem systems?
Yeah, and that's a fantastic question. And it's really around, strong authentication and access control, right? We mentioned a lot with JWT OAuth authentication, even single sign-on. But being able to authenticate with these pieces, along with that role-based security is very important. And being able to use, a secure connection, right? And I talked about a VPN earlier, and that's a very secure connection. Being able to use the VPN to access these AI services that you want to utilize when you do keep your data on-prem, is very important. And again, I mentioned it before. It's the encryption as well. Data has to be encrypted through transit and as well as also at rest. So being able to encrypt that data, get out to the cloud, cloud-based models and the AI services out there is also very important and prevalent as well. And I'd say that's the biggest thing is that really secure connection out to these solutions. So
Yeah. And that's obviously something that you'll have to plan for and something that a lot of these companies like, yeah, it's something that really will come up, especially when it comes to your data, because obviously you don't want anyone to be looking at that. That shouldn't be. Are cloud platforms like OCI and Azure compliant by default, or is there oversight still needed with these?
oh no, that's a fantastic question. That's, yeah, specifically talking about the cloud model, and they are. are compliant by design, right? And they offer, a certified infrastructure. It's built on strong security. You will have to oversee, configuring what I mentioned before, the identity and access management, so the security and user policies. So certain users only have access to certain models or certain services. Users only have certain access to certain databases, even. Where you'll have access to data and even end user, such as a digital assistant type of end user authentication. It's really the biggest thing, but there is, platforms are compliant. It's all around that identity and access management that you have in your company.
Yeah. And still sticking with the compliance side, why should companies, or even when should they favor an on-prem solution for these compliance reasons?
Yeah, this is a great question too, Nate. And it's all around, having.
I'm on a roll. So many great questions.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, and it's really around what I really mentioned before is, the companies that want to keep everything within their four walls. When they have really sensitive data, whether that be financial, healthcare, you can think of it that way, and they just can't, in their right mind, move out to the cloud or do any sort of migration like that. A company really needs to control everything, and for audit requirements, it's important that we really think about the on-prem solution. And they don't really recognize specific cloud providers for various services as well. I said, a lot of cloud providers are, prevalent and up to speed with these certifications, but it's really around, do you have a good backbone in security? Um, that you don't want to risk losing all that and kind of re-architecting all that in the cloud. So that's very important, and I think that's where companies we need to look on-prem for those compliance reasons is for that reason.
Yeah, there's a lot of sensitive data out there, and it's all
Yeah,
use case based. Like, if
absolutely.
you are utilizing specific, like you mentioned, healthcare data
Yeah,
or specific, like that side of the world where you are giving away sensitive data, you're not going to be wanting to just put that out in the cloud in one way, shape, or form.
absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. But what are to move on to the next, what are more of the performance implications of hybrid versus a cloud native AI when working with JD Edwards?
Yeah, and I think we mentioned a little bit about data latency really before, but it's really about, data must travel from those on-prem services through a secure VPN to those cloud services. Um, a lot of companies have really started to use private containers to really access those AI services. And that helps with the security as well. I failed to mention that before, so I do apologize, but that helps with security as well. But it's really about having that secure connection, but just traveling back and forth. It just really makes the latency a lot longer than with the cloud. As I said, you're using a secure VPN. It's really fast data exchange when you're all on the same VPN there, VBC, you're all on the same cloud infrastructure, same tendency, same place. It's really easy to connect to different sources, and data just moves a lot quicker that way. And then you really got to look at as well as the integration, right? You're really required to have API gateways to have secure data connections, whether that be to a third party database, your JD Edwards ERP system, Salesforce, other ERP systems. And those gateways again are a little bit more complex, I guess, to really build out. Whereas your data's in the cloud, you can have direct integrations between, JDE and the AI services out there or other databases that already live on your cloud. So it's really around the connections and the integrations. That could also slow down, like if you really think about it, if you really want real time modeling or real time AI solutions, latency becomes a big thing, and that's where the cloud can be almost that real time streamlining of data. Whereas on prem, it's definitely going to hinder that. You may get every 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and doesn't it's not conducive for a user to go to wait that long for a solution or for a response to a solution. So
Yeah. And the way you put it, it kind of seems like cloud is always better, but is it? Are there specific cases out there that maybe it's not better for some of these on-prem people when it comes to performance and latency?
Yeah, I would say most again, with the latency, it's kinda tough because everything's right there at your disposal, and it's very close. But it's really important to understand that, when you upgrade to the cloud, and you move everything there, and then we can get into this a little bit later, but the services become more readily available. However, if you wanna do a sort of thing like POC testing or moving smaller workloads of data, to the cloud, right, and connecting to those AI solutions, you already have, the data intact. It's already clean. It's in your infrastructure. You have all the services built. Oh, you have all the infrastructure around it. And you just want to play around with it. You can really migrate a small data set, and connect to those AI services for that specific use case. Maybe you just want to gain insights on your data, or leverage just a simple financial chatbot. That's really when, staying on-prem actually is feasible. It's really when you're starting your AI journey, when you're starting to get into it, is where the on-prem plus cloud or hybrid model makes the most sense.
Yeah. And how would you really measure success in performance here?
Yeah, and again, and I talked about it earlier, and it's really going to depend on that specific use case that you're trying to provide, value to your business. Are you using those large workloads and that real time data that I talked about with the cloud approach? Are you trying to build out, an AI solution or an AI platform or roadmap really that can take, more than 6 months, maybe a year, 2 years? Or are you trying to do the hybrid approach where you just wanna do a quick win or a simpler task, right? And you're not ready to leverage all the capabilities of, the cloud architecture, not even, have that project of moving everything to the cloud as well, because you gotta think that's a project within itself to move to the cloud. So it's really with getting started, getting those simple workloads figured out, getting those, simple process improvements for AI, is really the reason why you wanna choose a hybrid model over the cloud, right? Real time, larger workloads for the cloud, using a lot more services, and then hybrid, there's quick win solutions is a good way to think about it.
And we're all about quick wins here at ERP Suites, that's for
Absolutely.
sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right. So we talked about a lot of the security side and the performance side, but what about the scalability and flexibility? Which architecture better supports like a long-term scalability, especially if AI adoption truly grows like we believe it will?
Yeah, and that's a fantastic question, Nate. And really, with the cloud, or sorry, with the hybrid model, we'll start there first. It's really around, if you're gonna run these AI solutions, you're gonna run these AI models out there, but you want to leverage maybe some hardware GPUs to run it in-house. That's really around, that really gets expensive. Let's just say that, right? Because you're not able to easily scale up or scale down your infrastructure, and how you're able to run these AI solutions or AI models. Whereas the cloud approach, it's very serverless. Let's just call it that, right? So you're able to scale up a large language model or solution that you're using an instance that you may be running against the model. You can scale up or scale down compared to usability. If you're trying out, a digital assistant as a service or a document understanding tool as a service, and it maybe doesn't pan out to the ad solution you want, it's really resources on demand is the best way to do it, is to talk about the cloud, right? Um, and yeah, just basically end-to-end architecture as well. Just really allows you to scale up and scale down on services and allow you to have more compute, to run AI model solutions services as well. And on-prem, or on-prem plus cloud or hybrid, you're very limited, with that.
Yeah. Yeah, but how does it on the cloud like truly look like? Like what does elastic scaling in the cloud actually look like day to day?
Yeah, yeah, really day to day, it's just about, really automating or adjusting those resources you have. And it's specifically around, CPU and memory and how much you would need to run any AI solution. If the resource, capacity drops, or let's say someone's not using a digital assistant as often and there's not as many users, not as many inputs, we're able to elastically, scale up or scale down that instance to save cost. Right. It's basically on demand on how often you're using these solutions. And it's really helpful to understand, when users aren't using the real resource, um, it helps you kind of keep track of that too, right? So you can keep track of, there might be peak times or peak seasons when the users are using the specific service or resource. And when can we kind of, it will turn off and turn back down, but maybe you can lower the CPU, maybe we can lower the GPUs based on usage. So it allows you to be more flexible, allow you to have better cost savings around the infrastructure as a whole. And you're not as pigeonholed with that.
Yeah. So what you're saying is obviously the cloud in this flexibility with the scalability, it's a little bit better in terms of what you can actually do if you need to scale up your business, if you need to scale down your business.
Yeah,
You are flexible more in the cloud than you are on-prem. Makes a lot of
absolutely.
sense. Then even if we go back a step, it seems like when we're talking about latency, we're talking about performance, it seems like the cloud might be the better choice there, just depending on what you're actually utilizing it for. Yes, if you wanna utilize small amounts of data, and it doesn't really matter in terms of, like, those quick wins that we were talking about.
Yep.
If it then it is just little things, then maybe you won't really notice it. But there's still that performance side if you are using larger data sets, if you are utilizing AI in more than just 1 or 2 ways. So it's seeming like the cloud is looking like a better option right now, but we're not even close to unpacking all of this. So what does it look like in terms of cost for both of
Yeah.
these models? Not just upfront, but over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would say, with the hybrid model, the costing can get, you know, really you do have the hardware up front for the costing, right? If you really think about that, you do have the maintenance, you have the hardware. If you're gonna, apply some more AI modeling to run against that hardware, you might have to buy more. But in the long run, it's really about, it's a much higher cost on-prem plus the cloud to implement AI services and agents in, the current framework, right? Another thing we really want to think about with costs as well is since you have this current security framework, and you just want to utilize AI models out there, the cost is definitely going to be around, the people and managing different people inside of, maybe it's your DBAs who have to learn how to structure data or send data out to these AI models or system administrations to understand how these different models securely connect. We talk about probably in our podcast, but MCP protocol. So using that for agents talking to different agents. It's just basically around you need this intellectual um, property, and you have to pay for more people, data scientists as well, solution architects to understand, the different cloud services out there. Is provides just a gigantic, or not gigantic, but a huge cost for being on-prem plus the cloud. Um, is what you really got to think about. Now on the cloud though, what you really want to think about with the cost is, again, we mentioned the serverless. It's a lot of pay as you go for doing that, and with the cloud too. It's really easy to experiment as well between the different tools and technologies. We talk serverless. We talk turning down digital assistant if you don't want it, turning down a document understanding tool if you don't want it. If you're not liking an LLM, turning it off, switch to another one. It really reduces that ability. Really around the cloud, I mean, the people part is you're really just spending it on people who understand the services, so the cloud-based services. Um, so it's just a little bit different there. Not as much support or security as the on-prem. I failed to mention that, but you still need people like security to understand how the infrastructure of the on-prem plus cloud security relates to connecting to a cloud provider. So that's also big though, but I think that would, yeah, I mean, I think for cost considerations, it's just really around those specific points that I mentioned
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like, I'm sure there's still people that are out here that are listening to this podcast right now and saying, "I'm already on-prem. We already spent that money
Yeah,
to be on-prem."
right.
Which that makes a lot of sense. Like, yeah, they already spent that upfront cost, and so maybe in the short term, at least, they won't really see that because they already accounted for it. It was X amount of years ago, whatever.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would mention too with that, Nate, that's a great point you mentioned too, is that's definitely the upfront cost would be moving to the cloud, right? And they've already paid for everything, so they want to stay on-prem. Another thing to really think about too is with the movement of agentic AI, not trying to get too far off topic here, but the movement of agentic AI, all these services and solutions are changing and changing and changing. So, companies that are already on-prem might not feel that AI is at a good enough spot for them to where they can validate going to the cloud and actually leveraging all these different services and solutions out there. So that's another thing to really think about why you stay on-prem, right? Is, have the ability to do that quick win, try that one thing, do it, right? If it doesn't work, scale it back. You still have your entire infrastructure intact, your security, and your data is all still there too. So
Yeah, it's funny you bring up agentic AI. Where actually that'll be the next podcast. It'll be released in 2 weeks after this one.
awesome.
So yeah, we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into that eventually. But right now, that's not what we're talking about. So when does hybrid, when that's talking on-prem data with an AI agent or AI service from the cloud, when does that become more expensive than maybe what somebody would expect?
Yeah, yeah, and I think what you really want to think about with the hybrid model is, maybe, and then this is just, hypothetical, you might have duplicate data, right? So let's say your data is on-prem, but you're having latency issues, so you want to move it to the cloud, the data to access, the different servers and different services out there. Just as a test, right? So you're kind of managing double workload, right? To get that to lower that latency because you have data on-prem in an ERP database, and you also have data in the cloud. You also really got to think about, when you have to create these new connections. I've talked about that in the past with, in the past podcast here. It's having those secure, API calls and connections and end-to-end transits, and when you have a large language model that you're using, maybe that's, Claude, but you want to replace it with, um, just another one. I ChatGPT, I don't want to use here, but just want to replace it with a different model. You have to create a whole new connection to do that, right? On the hybrid model. So creating all those new connections securely, making sure that's intact, could get a little tedious, could get a little cumbersome as well. And you also got to think to the point too is, when you do create these servers, or when you do connect out to cloud services and you use them, and then all of a sudden, you stop using them or the usage goes down. We talked about this with the cloud model, being able to scale up and scale down. It's just sitting out there, right? And you don't have the ability to autonomously scale up and scale down those services. So they may sit idle. You might be wasting money and on, something, a solution you're not even using, in the sense, right? So that's another thing to really think about as well. But yeah, it really is all around, duplicate data, creating all those different new connections as you want to start to use different AI tools or services, large language models, RAG, digital assistants, all that. And then again, the idle workloads or idle services out there as well.
Yeah, all right. So obviously we're breaking down a little bit more of the hybrid side, but what about the cloud? Is it ever too expensive to really justify?
Yeah, and we've harped on it before, and why a lot of companies still want to stay on prem and want to create those secure connections. It's because of the upfront file costs, right? Do companies or customers even have the budget for the move to the cloud? Is it in their roadmap? Is it going to be 1 year, 2 year, 3 years down the road? But they're ready to invest in a small AI implementation. That's when it really becomes too expensive because you don't want to move everything to the cloud. You just want that quick win, as we mentioned before. And another good one too is like if you're continually moving, data sets from different databases or something, right? It's going to be tough to have everything in the cloud, especially all your different data sources and whatnot. Some might live on-prem. Having the ability to connect to those different ones and have the budget for everything to be in the cloud, really, that could get very costly as well. And really, it comes to the fact that we talked on-prem a lot about the security architecture and really the data architecture that's already there and you're already familiar with it, every data architect, all the DBAs are familiar with it, you really have to think about, and it goes with the upfront cost of moving to the cloud, but re-architecting the data, re-architecting the security, as it will seamlessly get easier, as we talked about in the past with security, with identity and access management, and really having your data in all one place, like a data lake is a term we like to throw out as well. The upfront cost of really doing all that as well, and recreating all that is where the cloud does get really expensive. So it's really all about budget, timeline. Is it there? Is it not? Or are you just really looking to improve, a single AI process where you want to stay in the hybrid model?
Yeah. So to maybe sum it all up a little bit, it might be cheaper if your infrastructure is already on-prem
Yep.
and it's already in place. There might be surprise costs from scaling AI, 100%. But maybe if everything's already in place, maybe on-prem is that right way to go. But for cloud, yes, higher upfront costs, but to pay as you go, there's lower maintenance.
Yep.
And yes, you might have long-term subscriptions and lock-in concerns, but after you make that move, you don't really want to go back. And that's very true, especially because of all the reasons that we've listed out here. Now, I will say, and this is something that our CEO says all the time, cost is not the reason that you should move to the cloud. Yes, it can be expensive off the bat. Yes, for X, Y, and Z, maybe you want to stay on-prem for a little bit longer. But cost should not be the main reason that you shouldn't move, because there's so much that you can do with the cloud, and there's a lot of potential and a lot of ROI opportunities that the cloud unlocks for a lot of these companies. And yes, there are a lot of reasons to stay, and we've laid them out so far. But to get into a little bit more of maybe a reason to stay or go, which setup allows faster AI adoption and integration with these new tools?
Yeah, and it's definitely Nate the cloud native approach, and there's a few few main points, few examples I can get for that. It's really seamless integration, from your cloud AI data sources to the cloud AI services such as Gen AI, digital assistants, document understanding, different tools we use out there, and being able to leverage those different tools, and have those connections be very seamless, right? Not having a lot of security going into them. You give access with identity management from one service to another service, and you're good to go. It's fast access of really understanding and connecting to other services such as large language models that are out there. Because of secure and fast APIs as well. Integrating with those, that's also very important, and so it allows you the scalability to try large language models that might work for one solution, turn it off if it's not, and turn it back on, and turn back on another one for a different one. So securely quick APIs that are built out in the cloud, all on the same virtual private network as well that we talked about earlier with security, and it allows you to really test, different POCs, different tools out there. If one thing doesn't work, you can shut it off. Again, we talked about the seamlessness of that and the cost savings behind that. Spin it up, spin it back down, try it. If it doesn't work, try something else. Because there's just so many different tools at your disposal that you might want to use and might want to try out there for different ways you're trying to solve your problems in your business. So definitely the cloud native approach for sure.
Yeah. But are there we talk about these tools all the time, especially on this podcast, but are there any new AI features that JD users can't easily access in maybe a hybrid model compared to the
Yeah, yeah, and that's good. And you know what, Nate, you did mention vendor lock-in before, but it still gives you access to a lot of good models out there. When you really talk though about the hybrid model, you don't have access to the rapidly changing or rapidly evolving models. So let's say they get better and better. It's not just a quick update; it's a whole new different connection out there. It's a whole different way to connect it via an API token or authentication. So you can't just switch easily on and off. There's large language models out there on the cloud. And you wouldn't really have access to all the new features such as, autonomous agents. I mentioned before, agentic AI, RAG-based services, vector database, all those big coin terms you're going to start to learn about as you learn more about AI. It's just really hard to start to connect to those with the hybrid model and update and really update your AI stack when you're developing a solution is something to really think about. It's very one dimensional, one sided. What you have is what you get, kind of stack. Whereas this one, you can be more dynamic and substitute different services out there as they become more relevant in your solution. So that's definitely something you really want to think about too. And also, you really have access to the serverless GPUs clusters that can, highly services can host your data, can run, higher CPU, large language models out there and other services as well. Um, and I think it's really important to also mention that, um, you can't really access, especially in the JD Edwards space, these AI services without being on tools release 9.2.8.2, which allows for secure authentication to these services too. So that's going back to being able to access these services and the different loopholes not loopholes, but different connections you would have to go through. That would be a little bit more challenging here to access the hybrid model. So um,
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
really good.
biggest thing. It's all the new technology and different things you need to access or upgrade to access. So
Yeah, so yeah, you would have to upgrade. There's more of a cost on that side of
yeah,
things to
100%.
maybe hit one of these things. And yeah, obviously we talked about cost earlier not being a main factor in one of these things, but yeah, you would have to upgrade to get certain services, to get the new
Yep.
changing ones, to get the better things that are out there right now, which maybe you wouldn't really have to go through when it comes to being plugged into an actual cloud service. But in terms of an internal resource, right?
Yeah.
What internal resources are required to really manage a hybrid model versus maybe a cloud model?
Yeah, and we mentioned resources, a little bit earlier because I wanted to, that was part of the cost. And this is where we're going to highlight, who would actually be involved in that hybrid model and really why they would be involved, right? So, you think about the connectivity is the biggest thing from, for the hybrid model, connecting those on-prem data sources to the cloud-based services and solutions we talked about out there. So you need a network engineer. You might need multiple network engineers to continue that connection or keep that connection up or switch between different services as you do it. Different system admins and security teams, in-house to make sure your security infrastructure, um, you know, really doesn't change, but you're able to, implement AI solutions securely. You really need security teams, make sure everything's compliant, right? HIPAA compliant if needed. Just an example, right? Um, you really think about, CNCs have really managed the JD environment. Going back to them real quick is, you have CNCs in house and maybe you have a vendor, but you still have to manage your JD Edwards environment. You're still connecting directly to it, right? It's still you track your ERP in your system. So keeping that up to date, making sure all the data is clean, all that sort of stuff. You need people around that, database admins for connectivity if you're connecting to other third party data sources. Um, you know, DevOps to manage different pipelines as well. And again, on the AI side, it's really around data sciences. You might even need too. So that's very important too. Just on the AI side, you're going to need some people as well who understand that aspect of it. Whereas in the cloud, it's really around you still need some AI knowledge, right? But some of these tools can become easy to use via GUI, right? Easier to understand. There's good documentation out there. But you just really need data engineers to understand how to move data from one place to another in the cloud. You might have like a light cloud infrastructure team that understands maybe the identity access management or other pieces of it. And you might have a small, as I mentioned before, kind of a small machine learning team who really understands the tools. But with these cloud providers and having the ability to connect everything together pretty seamlessly, that becomes pretty light. So you can see kind of the big difference between what you would need um, with the hybrid model versus the cloud there as far as internal teams.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is maybe having that hybrid model, it might put a little bit more pressure on your internal teams. Am I right about that?
Yeah, yeah, because it's really around, you already have those people like secure. Let's just take to for example, maybe the DBAs or CNCs or security team. They already have their day-to-day jobs, and now you're pulling them in to do more AI initiatives that might be on your roadmap. So it just adds to the workload, right? And can really strain their time and resources that they might not have already had before. So you're really asking other people with expertise in-house, or, and I didn't mention before, you would have to hire more, right? Hire more people with those capabilities, with that understanding that you may not have in-house, to fit those gaps and minimize the, the high resources or high workload that current internal staff may have. So
Yeah. And with the cloud model, or maybe you just have a smaller team or a smaller company or anything like that, would these smaller teams benefit more from going fully cloud, or is there a certain window there of, oh yeah, on-prem, you can maybe make it work?
yeah, and it still goes back to the budget though. With do we have enough to move on-prem? But let's put that aside. I think it does because of what we really talked about before with leveraging different cloud services and the scalability and turning off and turning on resources.
Yeah.
It's really about just, having a good cloud team as well as, a small AI team that understand those services when you're out there and being able to seamlessly connect, but you can turn off and turn down. Just not as many internal people would really need to be involved in that. It's almost like a separate sort of thing, because, as we mentioned before, your security is really intact, right? You just have to worry about the users accessing different services. So the security is already there. The infrastructure is all in the cloud. And basically, so you would just really need an AI team and a cloud engineer if you want to think about it that way. So smaller teams, definitely so, especially if you're building out a small team to the AI initiatives. But if you're picking other resources from different teams, it can
Yeah.
get a little cumbersome. So I would say I agree with that, Nate.
Yeah, and maybe there might be an issue in the beginning with the whole lift and shift, but
Yeah,
past that, I can't really see an actual issue if you do have a smaller team or a smaller company or anything like that.
yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. But let's get to the reason why everyone's here. When should a company go hybrid, and when should they move everything to the cloud?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, Nate. And it's really around, the hybrid model is when you've already made a lot of investments on-prem and you got to stay on-prem, that's very important. And if we really think about, having strong security and compliance regulations within your business and having to really keep most of the infrastructure within the four walls with the extent of creating those secure connections to go outside of your four walls and connect to those different AI services out there. And we also want to think about, do you just want to do a quick win, right?
Yeah.
And just an internal chatbot, whether you want to connect to those LLMs out there securely, and just have an internal chatbot that your users can use just to get started on your AI journey. And then lastly, it's really around, do you have the budget to be flexible with AI, or is it something you're just trying to get started with? So I think that's very important to understand as well. The cloud model is definitely when you're really looking to scale fast and really reinvent how you want to do business. You've taken AI to the full extent and you want to really invest it in. You have a strong budget around that, right? And I think another thing too is when you're also really looking to, really unify your data with AI and understand all that and combine it all in sort of a data lake where you can easily access those services securely via the VPC or VPN inside the cloud. And it's also, the ability, as we mentioned before, the ability to scale up and scale down those AI services as you're trying new ones, as you're adding or removing services based on, maybe a project you built out, an AI project or solution you built out. You need something new or you got rid of something because it's become obsolete or deprecated and you wanted to use the newer and greater thing. It's easier to do that with the scalability. And then if you really just want to understand really operational expenses of implementing AI, you have more of a budget around that, right? And you can understand what you're actually investing in AI. And if you don't have money to invest it, then as we said, you can turn off those AI services as needed. Um, but it's really more of a you understand what you're investing. So
Yeah. And honestly, no matter which model you choose, success comes down to one thing: alignment between your data strategy, your risk profile, and your innovation goals. If you're not sure where to start, reach out to ERP Suites. They've helped hundreds of JD Edwards customers modernize with confidence. Visit erpsuites.com/AI to learn more or to sign up for our assessment to start your AI journey today. You can also download our 10-week starter guide for free right now. Just look at erpsuites.com/AI. But thanks for listening to Not Your Grandpa's JD Edwards. Drew, huge shout out to you for jumping back onto this podcast. Always love hearing you talk about AI. But thanks for listening to Not Your Grandpa's JD Edwards, and we'll see you next time.